Hey, I'm Guy Powell, and welcome to the next episode of the Backstory on Marketing and AI. If you haven't already done so, please visit prorelevant.com and sign up for more of these episodes and podcasts. I am the author of the upcoming book, The AI Marketing Machine, and you can find out more information on this at marketingmachine.prorelevant.com. Today, I'm interviewing John Gillum with Originality.ai, and he has an incredibly interesting story and how he got started and what have you. But let me tell you a little bit about him. He is the founder and CEO of Originality.ai, and they provide a complete tool set that helps website owners, content marketers, writers, and publishers hit publish with integrity in the world of generative AI, as well as specializing in AI detection technology. He is also the co-founder of Motion Invest, where they help you buy and sell content sites quickly. How cool is that? Welcome, John. Really great to have you.
Thanks, Guy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so John, before we get started, so what is your backstory on getting involved in AI and marketing?
Yeah, so started, going way back to school, mechanical engineer. When the workforce wanted to move back to my hometown, built up some online businesses. Those online businesses all revolved around publishing content on the web. Built up some extra capacity within that portfolio of work, where we turned ourselves into a content marketing agency, had sold that content marketing agency, and through that process had seen this wave of generative AI coming. We were the heaviest users of Jasper at one point, where we were transparently selling AI generated content, but then we didn't have any great way to QA QC, and we had an AI policy in place. And this is predating ChatGPT. We had an AI policy in place, but we didn't have any way of policing it. And so that's where the idea for Originality came from, to be a complete quality control tool for digital marketers looking to publish content on the web.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, I haven't played with Jasper. We've been doing some stuff on our own. And one of the things, though, if you're using AI to programmatically generate hyper-personalized content for tens and hundreds of thousands of email recipients or what have you, is how do you know that what it's generating is correct? And how do you do that? So is that what you're doing to some extent, or how does Originality.ai fit into that equation?
Yeah, so we view ourselves as a toolbox for copy editors. So anybody that receives text from a writer and then wants to make sure that that text meets certain standards. So we have AI detection, so whether or not it was generated by AI and how much so, what plagiarism check, fact check, grammar, spelling, readability, and then editorial guideline compliance is coming. So every check that an editor does, we make that process easier.
Yeah, but how do you make sure that the content is right? I mean, I granted that what you're doing is incredibly important in making sure that, that all of that's there. But how do you make sure then that the actual content is right?
Yeah, so if there's so we have a fact checker, so that checks if the facts are correct. The question of sort of like, is this content going to perform well in Google is what a lot of our customers are after, and we have a content optimization tool. But there's still a human in the loop to make sure that that content is meeting the intent of what they're trying to achieve. So we're not looking to sort of totally replace that copy editor. We're trying to be the tools for them to execute their job more efficiently.
Yeah, awesome. And that's such a critical piece of content generation and what marketing, a lot of marketers do when they're in the marketing space. So fantastic. So now you have an interesting story about how you guys launched related to when ChatGPT kind of went public. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we started building Originality 2021, maybe a bit in 2022. Didn't view it as sort of a high flying opportunity. Thought it was just something that was needed, and we ended up sort of taking our time to launch it. Launched it on the Friday, and then ChatGPT ended up launching on basically the Monday. So kind of 3 days after we launched. And yeah, we certainly didn't set out to build a sort of societally important company, but quickly the ability to tell whether or not content was AI generated or not became a societally important question. And we got, extremely lucky on timing. Hindsight 2020, wish we'd pushed the pace a lot harder and been in the market for a while. But it was Yeah, certainly some exciting timing.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things. How fast do you push the envelope? And there's never any good time to launch other than sooner than what you'd like to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Now, so if you were going to launch today, what would you do differently? You talk a little bit about, the transparency and transparency gap. Tell us a little bit about what you mean there.
Yeah, so we view kind of a key role that we fill as driving transparency between the writer, the editor, the marketing agency, marketing company, and then ultimately the client. And if somebody copies and pastes content out of ChatGPT and passes it off as their own work and asks to get paid the equivalent as if they had written it themselves, that there's somebody in that line of sort of workflow that is losing. And so we try and drive transparency through that entire workflow so people understand how much AI has been used, where it's acceptable to be used, and then make sure all the other sort of checks are in place. What would we do differently now? I think it'd be a lot of the same stuff. Where it's ultimately what we want is everyone to be understanding of how AI has been used. I think still missing on the transparency piece is an understanding from all people involved in that workflow of what is and isn't acceptable for the use of AI. We see a lot of marketing companies and website owners that are not well informed on how much AI content is being published on their site, and that's a risk that they're accepting that they have no sort of understanding of at this point.
Yeah, yeah, and I can imagine, it's not only the AI, the detection of the content that was written by AI versus a human, but it's also the possibility that there's plagiarism, and then of course there's fact checking and the whole hallucination. So tell us a little bit about that and how Originality can handle that.
Yeah, so exactly. Whether or not you're sort of pro, yep, we're happy to have this content written by AI. We accept the risk that publishing AI content brings, and but we're going to benefit from this efficiency, and we're going to publish this AI generated content. But nobody wants to publish factually incorrect information, and so the way our fact checker works is through a combination of RAG and some other sort of layered strategies. It goes out to try and truly sort of identify what the known understanding of sort of identifying a fact and what the known understanding of that fact is in the world. A recent example was the Chicago Sun-Times published a summer reading list. It turned out that the author had used AI, and the AI had hallucinated 10 of the 15 books weren't even real. And this was published as a summer reading list in some big newspapers. When we checked that piece of content against our tool correctly identified that it had been one AI generated, and so could have heightened the sort of the quality control checks that would have been needed. And then second, the fact checker identified that those 10 books were actually not real books. And so sort of for 10-second effort and 14-cent cost, the amount of embarrassment that those major newspapers experienced could have been totally avoided.
Yeah, interesting. It's funny though, as an author, now I know what 10 books I need to write if they're on the bestseller list for the summer read.
Right.
How
Yeah.
funny. One thing too, when I'm writing content or, marketers are writing content is, there's kind of a diminishing returns for when you're using AI to help you versus just writing it yourself. And it's kind of then where is that, how do you determine where that good enough is, where it's, good enough to publish, where as opposed to, oh my God, there's a real red flag, like in your example with the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yeah, and that's where the human in the loop, I think, is becomes so critical. I mean, I think the dream of all of us is like when we see AI as marketers, we're like, wait, where's the magic button that I can press and the whole thing is done for me? And I think the reality is that doesn't exist. And so what is good enough is ultimately up to the human in the loop to understand their audience. And that's where the humanness of marketing still exists, is where that line, they're the ones that need to draw that line on what's good enough. AI helps them get there more efficiently, but ultimately that is a very human decision on does this piece of content going to meet the objectives that I have for it?
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you a question. A lot of because it looks like you also do plagiarism detection and stuff like that. So if I just say to, let's say, ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, or Claude, I say, write me this content and do it in a plagiarism-free manner. Does that actually make it plagiarism-free, or is there still a possibility that it has plagiarized something?
AI will generally produce content that is plagiarism free. AI is synthesizing its existing knowledge. It will rarely produce content that is plagiarized, meaning a direct quote from existing content, unless you asked it to provide a quote. And so, almost always, AI content is plagiarism free, which is sort of an interesting thing, because that's the check that had historically always been needed to be done. But right now, yeah, AI will generally produce plagiarism-free content.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I didn't realize that. I was always curious as to whether it was, copying, and I don't know how many words you need to be plagiarism free. So if I take 5 words, or is it 10 words, or is it 3 words, Interesting that you say that. That actually makes me feel a lot better about what I've been using from AI.
Yeah, no, it'll be so under 5% is sort of the, like, call it gold standard of that's clearly plagiarism free, and AI will constantly produce content that has a below 5% score in plagiarism.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks for that. So now there's this challenge of invisible characters. Tell us what that is and what that means, and why do marketers have to worry about it?
Yeah, it's been sort of an interesting recent development where LLMs will train on the data that is available to them. They will often they have a bias towards professionally published material to learn off of, because they want to sort of be producing the most informative, authoritative, high quality content. And they also have a bias to being sort of as trustworthy as possible, and be perceived as sort of an authority in the content that LLMs produce. Invisible characters are characters that are used at sort of when editors are doing, like, books, and professional editors, not used when you're just using your own keyboard. And so what's happened is LLMs have learned to, off of this sort of professionally edited content, to insert these hidden Unicode characters. And these can be like the long M dash that ChatGPT loves to use right now. Some zero space characters. And so things that are used in sort of professional editing that aren't used in day-to-day writing, OpenAI or in other LLMs have learned to use these. And so what's the problem? Well, so what the theory initially, when people discovered that these invisible characters were being entered by LLMs, was that was their attempt at fingerprinting. That is not the case. It's not. OpenAI is not trying to watermark its content using these invisible characters, but these invisible characters are being sort of injected into content right now without the authors really being aware of what that is. And it can cause a couple of challenges. One, it's an easy tell visually that content was likely generated by AI, because no one writes with M dashes unless it's been copied out of ChatGPT. And then secondly, it can produce some formatting challenges with when it gets copied and pasted into different locations. So it's sort of this. It's been sort of the last few months. This has been a sort of a thing that has been occurring out of LLMs. We launched a free tool that helps people see how many hidden characters are being developed, or how many hidden characters have sort of worked their way into your text, and then lets you remove them strategically. And that's just a free tool that we've developed, but to try and sort of educate people about the text that is being generated by these LLMs.
Yeah, interesting. And yeah, I hadn't heard about that. And that's really you hear about these hidden pixels or these invisible pixels, but that's a totally different purpose, as opposed to this, which it sounds like it's an after effect of the generation process that OpenAI is doing. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So one thing that I don't know what the right answer is, but when you think about SEO, you write this content and you think about Google and you want to write content that's obviously written for a human, and yet there are certain tricks and certain little things that you want to do to make sure that you have a couple of maybe not overstuffed, but moderately stuffed with the right keywords that you want to be found on with Google. And certainly, AI generated content can help there. But one of the challenges that I could see is that if everybody's using these tools and everybody's generating a ton of content, I mean that's kind of what AI is doing. Then all of a sudden, the SEO and how Google is now going to rank you and index you is their algorithm now has to change, it would seem like. Tell us a little bit about that, and tell us how this some of Google's new thoughts on how they're trying to index and rank the different content that they see online.
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating challenge right now, and fascinating time between AI mode, AI overview, and if you're competing on words, what is that? And you're competing against LLMs that can produce words, a near infinite number of words at near zero. It seems like zero cost. It's a fascinating challenge. So I'd say the sort of concept that we talk about at Originality, where we get 1.5 million visitors a month, organic traffic, and have a large scale sort of content marketing strategy being deployed, is to think beyond words. And so if all we're competing on in Google is like, hey, we got the perfect words combo, we need to think beyond words, and that's where we have a big focus on building tools, original studies, and going really deep on trying to add value beyond just the words on the page. And that's how we think about it internally from a content marketing standpoint. And what we know is that Google is absolutely punishing AI generated spam. And so if you're mass publishing AI generated content, Google is going to find you and punish you. And then it's a question of, like, we know that's bad. We know Google will punish that. And then it's a question of how far in the other direction are you going to swing? Is it human generated original research with a tool? That's like kind of on the other extreme of like, okay, this is obviously not AI generated spam. And so that's the question mark that I think a lot of marketers that are used to publishing content and ranking on Google are wrestling with. Is, we know Google punishes AI generated spam. Not all AI content is spam, but definitely all spam is AI generated in 2025. And so how do we deliver to users content that is sufficiently useful and valuable that they do need to click through, and an AI overview can't, or an AI mode can't solve that problem? And so we think a lot about unique research and tooling.
Yeah, interesting. So, and I think over the next couple of years, and maybe it's just the next couple of months, is content is going to proliferate like crazy. I think that's going to be a critical thing for how we as sellers or e-commerce or whatever want to be found on the by Google. And yet there's now just going to be so much more noise out there, even though it could be perfectly valid content. There's just going to be so much of it. So yeah, very interesting. Now, one thing that's critical. So we work with a lot of regulated industries, and they are, I don't know what you'd call it, but they're so hesitant to even touch AI and be able to use it in something that's going to be published. Everything that they write, whether it's content for a direct mail or an email, has to be approved by a lawyer. And it really limits their ability to be very creative. And so they've been blocked in a pretty strong way on using AI to help the marketers to generate content. Now, of course, the marketers are sitting there using their phones, and they're then typing something in over here, and then I don't know how they're copying and pasting it over, but they're basically doing the AI on their phone, and then they generate some good stuff and type it in on their laptop, the company laptop. And so tell us, the compliance is part of that. And so tell us, is there like a checklist or something like that that's really critical that regulated industries and even unregulated industries can use to mitigate the risk that they might have in publishing some I don't know, stray content, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think from a regulatory standpoint, we're going to see continued focus around regulatory traceability on the type of media that can cause the most societal harm. Not that text can't be incredibly impactful, but an image or a video that is a deep fake can swing elections, can cause significant societal
Mhm.
harm from a very sort of like discrete individual video. Again, not that like mass text can't also move society, but not in as sort of an acute way as sort of image, video, audio. And so I think from a regulatory standpoint, that's where the focus is going to land on watermarking. Text is going to be, I think, very driven by the company's policies. And I think what we're going to learn over the coming years is AI policy is going to become a critical part to, whether it be a SOC 2 audit or whether it be sort of any control, any company that has controls in place is going to need to start having AI editorial guidelines in place. And then those, whatever those guidelines are, that's where we hope our tool comes in and fits nicely, is whatever those guidelines are, we're a tool to make sure that those guidelines are being followed. That it's yeah, we got to make sure it's no AI has been involved. We want to make sure it's all factually correct, complies with their editorial guidelines. We want to be that layer in that sort of compliance process and helping companies make sure that the content that they're producing meets their requirements.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that sucked too. I mean, we suffer through it because our clients force it on us,
Yep.
and I mean, it's critical, no question about it. It's important. You got to have it. There's so many bad actors out there and it's so easy to make a mistake that you want to at least do everything you can to mitigate that risk. And especially if you're a multi-billion dollar company or whatever, you're the one that has the money, and they're the ones that
Yep.
are going to be the first to be sued. So it's pretty critical. So I really like, the ability to have something like Originality to be able to judge and critique and score whether my content then is going to be risky in some fashion. That makes a whole lot of sense. So yeah, fantastic. I can see a very bright future for what you're doing.
Yep. Oh, great. Thank
Yeah, absolutely. So one last question, and that is, what advice would you give a new upcoming new marketer?
Yeah, I think embrace AI, embrace your own personality, and I think especially when it comes to thinking about content marketing, think beyond words. How do you add value to the user beyond just putting words on a page? I think that's going to be a critical skill for people to be thinking about. Unique research, tools, calculators, resources, all options to help drive additional value that can't be easily spit out by an LLM. I think that's the advice that I give to our own marketing team and would give to a new marketer. But yeah, embrace or the dichotomy of AI and your own uniqueness, and then think about how to add value beyond words.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that makes a lot of sense. And because I think there's going to be a lot of challenge for new marketers coming into the market. And if they don't somehow stand out, then, as the kind of the hiring manager, you've got to find people that can really add value. And now in the age of AI, it's getting, I think, significantly more difficult for younger folks to add that value. And so being your own person, so to speak, is one way to do that.
Yeah, yeah, we just hired a new marketer and junior marketer, and that was the reason why. It was for sort of, call it, presence online was the most sort of loud, complete, clear personality coming through, consistent personality coming through in all of her sort of professional social media. And so that was sort of the difference maker for hiring her, was that, yeah, a very clear personality coming through, that could be hopefully harnessed for the sort of advancement of our goals within our own marketing company.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, John, thank you so much. This has been great and really appreciate it. So, where can folks find you and reach out to you and learn more about you and your company?
Yeah, emails jon@originality.ai. You can contact me there or find me on LinkedIn, Jonathan Gillum.
Yeah, fantastic. So thank you for that. And for the audience, please stay tuned for many other videos in this series of the backstory on marketing and AI. And please visit marketingmachine.prorelevant.com and find out more about my upcoming book, The AI Marketing Machine. And of course, don't forget to sign up for more episodes, but more importantly, rate this one with 5 stars, and then hopefully tell your friends about it as well. John, thank you so much. It was great to have you on today.
Awesome. Thanks, guy.
Thank you.